Students, so today we are going to discuss the effects of changes shift in demand and supply on the equilibrium price. So if the demand and supply curve shifts, what will be the impact on the equilibrium price and quantity? So that one we have to discuss with the help of a diagram. However, in practice, what we can see that when demand changes, supply will also shift and they will try to reach the equilibrium. So we have already done the causes or the determinants or the factor responsible for changing, increasing or decreasing the demand as well as supply. So in the case of demand shifts rightward or demand curve shifts rightward or leftward due to change in income of the consumer, taste and preference, credit facility and so on. Similarly, the supply curve will shift either rightward or leftward due to change in input prices, technology, taxation policy of the government and so on. So all these factor causes shift in demand and supply. Now today we will discuss what will happen if the demand curve shifts and supply is remaining same. So what will be the impact on equilibrium price? Similarly, we will discuss the second cases where if the supply curve is shifting and demand curve is remaining constant. So what will be the impact on equilibrium price and quantity? So we will discuss the two cases today. First we will start with what will happen if demand is shifting and supply is remaining constant. So here I am going to discuss the effects of shift in demand on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So let's consider the initial demand curve we have D0, D0 and the initial supply curve we have SS. So we know that where will get the equilibrium? The point at which the demand and supply intersect each other. So let's consider this point as E0. So equilibrium point, okay. Now at this point we have equilibrium price OP0 and the equilibrium quantity OQ0. So here we are starting with the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Now here if the supply remains same, here supply curve will remain same. Only the quantity demand will change. Now due to some reason, suppose say demand is shifting due to increase in income of the consumer, suppose say if the quantity demand increases, so in that case what will happen? The demand curve will shift rightward and due to that increase in income of the consumer, suppose say demand curve is shifting rightward. Now we have new demand curve, suppose say D1 is the new demand curve. Now if you see at the initial price OP0, if you extend this line, we can see that let's consider this quantity as OQ3. So at initial price, okay, at initial price quantity demand is, suppose say this one is K, P0K, but quantity supply is only P0E0. So P0E0 is quantity supply, P0K is quantity demand. Okay. So here what situation is arising? The situation of excess demand. The situation of excess demand is arising by how much amount? Q0, Q3. What is that? Excess demand. Okay. Q0, Q3 is the excess demand arising if we consider at the initial equilibrium price OP0. Now, if there is an excess demand, obviously the price will increase. So it will exert an upward pressure on the price. So price increases, price will increase and we will get the new equilibrium price. See here, new demand curve D1 and SS is intersecting each other at point, suppose say E1. Now at E1 we will get the new equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So if we draw a straight line on the price axis, we can see that the price increases from P0 to P1. So price is increasing. Similarly, if we draw a straight line on this quantity axis, we can see that we have a new quantity Q1. Okay, Q1 is the, so when there is a excess demand, obviously the price will increase, and we are getting the new equilibrium price, that is OP1 and new equilibrium quantity OQ1. So this is the case of increase in demand or shift in demand rightward towards right. Now we will consider the second case. If the demand decreases, okay, demand decreases, the demand curve will shift leftward. So that demand decreases maybe due to decrease in income of the consumer, maybe decrease in credit facility, maybe due to government policy and so on. So suppose let's consider the next case where demand is decreasing, and when demand decreases, the demand curve will shift leftward. So let's consider the next demand curve. We have D2 and D2. Remember one thing here, the supply is remaining constant. As we have already mentioned, supply remains same. Supply is not changing, only we are showing what will be the impact on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity if the demand shifts rightward and leftward. So when it shifts rightward, we have already discussed what will happen. The price will increase, quantity demand will decrease, because the price is increasing. It puts or it exerts an upward pressure on price due to excess demand. So we are getting new equilibrium point E1, where equilibrium price is OP1. Okay, equilibrium price is OP1 and equilibrium quantity is OQ1. So that is clear from the diagram. Now we are going to discuss the second case where the demand is decreasing, and when demand decreases, it shifts towards left. So if you see at the initial price, now at initial price there is a excess supply is here, but here if you see this new demand and supply curve, it is intersecting each other at point E2. So E2 is the equilibrium point. So here the price is, suppose say P2 and equilibrium quantity is Q2, but if you see at the initial price OP0, the situation of excess supply is arising, and due to that excess supply, it exerts a downward pressure on price. So the price of commodity is decreasing. That's why we are getting new equilibrium price OP2 and new equilibrium quantity OQ2. Once again, for this leftward shifting demand curve. So when income of the consumer decreases, taste and preference decreases, demand curve will shift leftward. And when it is shifting leftward, we are getting new equilibrium point. So this E2, okay, this one is E2. E2 is the new equilibrium point where the equilibrium price is OP2 and equilibrium quantity is OQ2. Here, if we measure at initial price, if we consider the initial price, we can see that there is an excess supply of commodity by Q2 Q0. Okay, excess Q2 Q0, excess supply by how much amount? Q2 Q0. So that will exert a downward pressure on price, and the price is decreasing from OP0 to OP2. So here equilibrium price is OP2 and the equilibrium quantity is OQ2. Okay, so if the demand curve shifts leftward, what is happening? Equilibrium price is also decreasing and the equilibrium quantity is also decreasing. Now we are going to discuss the effects of changes shift in supply on equilibrium price and quantity. So what happens when supply curve shifts and demand remaining constant? So what situation we have? Now we have demand remains constant. Constant means only the supply curve will shifts, and when supply curve shifts, what will be impact on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, that we have to explain. So for that we have to draw the diagram. Now we will start with the initial equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So this is our quantity axis, this one is our price axis, this is origin. We know that our demand curve is downward sloping. Suppose say D is the demand curve, and initial supply curve we have S0 is the initial supply curve. We know that we will get the equilibrium, the point at which demand and supply. So demand and supply is intersecting each other at point, suppose say E. So E is the equilibrium point, and if we draw a straight line on this price axis, suppose say this is OP0. So OP0 is the equilibrium price, and OQ0, suppose say this is our OQ0. OQ0 is the initial quantity. Now here we are going to discuss the impact of shift of supply. Now suppose say if supply increases due to improvement in technology, due to decrease in the input prices, due to improvement of taxation and subsidy policy of the government, so supply curve shifts rightward. Now suppose say we have new supply curve S1 is the new supply curve. Now so at S1, if we consider at the initial price, we can see that the quantity supply will be OQ3. So OQ3 is equilibrium quantity, okay, equilibrium quantity, and OP0 is the equilibrium price. Now here the supply is till that point K and demand is only, so here quantity supply is equals to P0K and the quantity demand is equals to P0E. Okay, P0E is the quantity demand because demand is still here, and quantity supply we have P0K because supply curve is till here. So that creates the situation of excess supply. Okay, excess supply. Now when there is a excess supply of commodity in the market, what will happen? What will be the impact on the price? The equilibrium price will decrease. Now we can see that new demand and supply curve, this is our new supply curve. Okay, this is our new supply curve, and this supply curve is intersecting the demand curve at this point. Suppose this is our E1. Now at new equilibrium price, we can see that the price of a commodity is decreasing from P0 to P1, and quantity demand is also decreasing from Q3 to Q1. Okay, now next case, what will happen if the supply curve shifts leftward? So when supply curve shifts leftward, suppose this S2 is the new supply curve. Now this new supply curve and demand curve is intersecting. You can see here intersecting at point, suppose say E2. So at equilibrium point E2 we have new equilibrium price, suppose say P2, and equilibrium quantity we have Q2. So when the supply curve shifts leftward, we can see that we are getting new equilibrium point E2 where the equilibrium price is increasing from OP0 to OP2. Equilibrium price OP2 is increasing, okay, and the quantity demand is also decreasing from OQ0 to OQ2. So quantity demand is decreasing. Now here if we consider at the initial price, so our supply curve is here. Now this creates the situation of excess demand. Demand is here because this is our demand curve. So demand is still here, but supply is only till point E2. So that will create the situation of excess demand. And because of that excess demand, we know that it exerts an upward pressure on the price. So price is increasing from OP2 to OP2. Okay, price increases from OP2 sorry, P, yes, OP0 to OP2, price is increasing. Similarly, quantity demand is decreasing from OQ0 to OQ2. So when supply curve shifts rightward, we will get the new equilibrium point at which the price, equilibrium price will decrease and the quantity demand will increase. But in the case of decrease in supply, when supply decreases, we will get the new equilibrium price. Okay, equilibrium price will increase and the equilibrium quantity will decrease. So this is the case of effects of changes shift in supply on equilibrium price. So when quantity supply changes, the supply curve will either shift rightward or leftward, causing an effect on equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Both equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity will change.